Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today at your Pushback channel. So, how do we define social progress? Indeed, what is social progress? Does any objective measure even exist? The motivation to write up this short essay came when listening to a super leftist SJW affirmative action college professor. You know the ones who in saner times would have flunked out of junior high school. So this so-called professor who was raving about how social progress can only be measured by how many quadriplegic black lesbians we have in positions of supreme power. Or in other words, the elevation of all those on the bottom of the imagined SJW social hierarchy to be forcibly placed at the top of the social hierarchy in the name of equal outcomes. Or when no white people at all are in positions of power or prestige, then, only then, we have, according to that low IQ social justice screamer, only then have we achieved, or truly achieved, social progress. So I think you get the drift of how social progress is viewed by these sort of people. Now, we can rightly dismiss such SJW rantings as infantile, irresponsible, deranged nonsense, which of course it is, but the question remains, what is social progress? And is any consensus even possible here? Can social progress be seen over the arc of thousands of years of human existence? And if so, how? So let's go back in time 2,000 years to ancient Rome. A diary kept by a Roman citizen complains his teenage son is not studying hard enough and spends too much time going out drinking and carousing with his buddies. The father is clearly concerned that if his son does not apply himself more diligently, he may not have the promising career his father hopes for him. And he doesn't want him to waste his youth drinking and going out and just having a good time. His teenage daughter, he observes, spends all her time shopping at the markets and gossiping with her female friends, and he despairs of this. His daughter also runs his servants ragged by sending notes to her girlfriends, so much so that the servants are unavailable for other duties. A specialist foot masseuse had to be called in to attend to the feet of one servant because so voracious was his daughter's appetite for sending notes to schoolgirl friends, all of which were supremely urgent notes, and then the servant had to wait on the note the girlfriend would write and then bring that back, then take the reply, and so on. The father goes on to complain about his wife secretly running up debts at the local fashion stores, which he later has to pay. And she's buying so many pairs of shoes which she wears only once or twice and then just puts them in the closet. He further complains the local property developers bribe government officials and local magistrates to have property rezoned or cases against them dismissed. He claims the government planning officials were bribed to divert a water supply using public money to a part of the town where the property developers had acquired lots of land in advance. So the property developers could then sell that land at a windfall profit because it now had water and fountains and wells and so on, which it previously didn't. So in 2,000 years of social time span, we can see nothing has really changed. All those things that Roman from 2,000 years ago was talking about, pointing out and complaining about, is exactly the same thing happening in any city and pretty much any family household today. Let's go back another 500 years, so 2,500 years ago to circa 500 BC, and things are still pretty much the same. Government officials claim construction companies are screwing them over by using inferior materials and trying to bribe building inspectors to look the other way at shoddy building practices. And also these construction companies are loading up invoices with fake costs. And so the local government officials are talking about they have to have very tight contracts to control these construction companies and hold them accountable. Again, 2,500 years ago, a meeting of the Greek states to negotiate the need to find a diplomatic solution to some regional wars, and the discussions they're having, which is some records still survive, is indistinguishable from a similar diplomatic meeting that could be happening today. So now let's go back even another 1,000 years to ancient Persia. A woman, obviously with a lot of leisure time on her hands, is writing on a stone tablet to her husband, who is away on business, asking him to send her money to remodel and renovate their dwelling. The reason for this is the lady down the road has just renovated and remodeled her dwelling, and she's been going out town boasting about it and making a big noise about it. So the letter writer is feeling bad about it. She's feeling diminished because this woman down the road has got a better house. So she's feeling bad. I mean, does she need a safe space? Is this a safe space, anyone? So the letter writer wants to outdo that woman and go one better and do a more expensive remodelling of her dwelling just to show that lady down the road who's boss. The husband writes back asking his wife, why is she trying to bankrupt him? And why is such a trivial matter getting her so worked up? Even when we review the 7 deadly sins, including laziness, greed, envy, jealousy, spite, bearing false witness, and so on, which was written many thousands of years ago, we can still see that's the current human communal condition today. So that the tragically frail human condition is unchanged over the last 5,000 or so years. We can assume even well before that, whenever human settlements were first formed. So the human mistakes of thousands of years ago in terms of social progress or lack of it are being made just as much today. It's just the same mistakes, the same things happening as did thousands of years ago. So it's hard to see where social progress is. Now, there's been technological progress, of course, but social progress, if so, what is it and how can we measure it? There don't seem to be any examples so far. Now, my list of what constitutes social progress, which was recently dismissed as just a sort of thing a white straight man would say. But anyway, here it is, and see what you think. And in the comments below, you put your ideas and your thoughts as to what social progress is and how it can be measured. Now, I believe rules and laws should be clear and they should be applied equally to all citizens. I believe education should be completely apolitical and available to all citizens, and educational outcomes, must be based on merit. I believe courts of law should be scrupulously impartial and due legal process also scrupulously observed, and all citizens should be subject to that same standard. I believe all politicians and public servants should not be corrupt or susceptible to bribes or inducements. I believe the sick, old and injured should be equally looked after by the state. I believe politicians should represent the voters. I believe the primary concern of elected politicians is to increase or maintain at very least stable the living standard of all citizens by any and all sustainable means. I believe roads and public infrastructure should be maintained to a high standard as a priority, not as an afterthought following the funding of lesbian painting classes. I believe NGOs should not be tax exempt if they engage in political activism, in any form of political activism. I believe the media should be scrupulously independent and not subject to any political activism. I believe the brightest and most productive members of our society should be well rewarded. How socially advanced are we today, really? Let's see. The media has never been more partisan and politicised and blatantly lies to the public, premeditated, blatant lying to the public. The public service from top to bottom in Western countries is hopelessly politicised. Courts are stacked with strident jurist activists, and politically contrived outcomes are now the norm in most courts. Black low IQ lesbians are reading stories to our children in public libraries, which our taxes pay for. Our own politicians blatantly represent the interests of the globalist elites against the well-being and the will of the citizenry. Feminist, gay, lesbian and racial propaganda is forced upon us without our agreement or consent, and it's wall to wall. Violent street gangs such as Antifa can randomly bash up those who they don't like and be more or less protected by the courts and the media. Very well, state-funded hatred of straight white males is now at pandemic proportions. We are not socially progressing, not even close. By all and every measure, we are going backwards in a descent into madness. You've been with Tacitus Day, and thank you for listening.